A little audio technical difficulties, y'all. We're gonna sign Doug back in a second, y'all. Check, check, check. 1, 2.
How we doing?
Check.
I can hear you.
So, yeah, you lost your audio. That's what we couldn't hear. We couldn't hear you.
Okay.
Okay, you're good now.
It was just nonsense anyway.
Okay, so I was saying, how have you been adjusting to the whole new measures of COVID-19?
It is. I'm not down there that often, but the times I in September and October, you wear a mask for rehearsal, and then you take it off. So it's a hit and miss thing. We've had cast members that have come down with it, so it's not something I want to bring home.
Have you like found that it's altered your, I guess you would say, your acting style per se, number one, with the new measures, or? Well,
the show has changed so much. I don't know that it's conducive to my acting style. It's very. We've always done it very fast, but it's a different show than it used to be when the Bells were at the helm.
How have you found, in a sense, like, I mean, you've been on the show forever. How have you found, the changes of daytime to now, and where do you see it going?
I think if they don't adjust to the narrative and to old time storytelling, they're going to continue to lose their audience. So I think it's like the polls. You can't always watch the polls. You have to speak from your heart, and hopefully that'll catch on. And so it used to be a story about families, and they used to delve quite deeply into issues, and they'd have several storylines going at once. Sometime in the classic episodes that we saw during the pandemic, they had Nikki and Victor's wedding, for example, but there were like 6 stories within that episode, not just the wedding.
The David Kimball.
Yeah, and now it's not constructed like that, that I can see anyway. It's pretty much one thread, one theme, and it's what other show? They had the Masquerade Ball.
Okay.
There again, they had several things going on in one episode, and Bill would never really end in a climax. It would blow off into several other stories. So we'd have to speak, but it would then split off into different story threads that he would then grow on. The guy was a genius. I did a little thing on Instagram during the pandemic called The Stories Behind the Stories, and we picked a lot of old clips, and you could see how many things he had going, and how he was tugging at so many heartstrings. And I mean, he just was a fountain of those kinds of emotions, and he would pick people that he could actually read their minds, and the people that have been there the longest, like Melody and Eric and Gene and me, he knew us inside and out. So he knew what strings to pull, and it was really an incredible place to work for so many years.
So tell me, how did you come across getting this role and starting, and was it your first choice?
I had dropped out of school, and I was taking some classes, but not many. And in a Taekwondo class that I had, there were 3 people, because I took it during the day, and one was a restaurant manager. The other was the husband of Victoria Mallory, who was Leslie Brooks, and I forget the third person. But out of all those those things. I got a job at a restaurant instead of driving taxi. I became friends with them. And as a favor to him, I went to pick her up at the studio, and John Conboy, who was then the executive producer, came out, saw me. I was introduced to him, and I was already studying to be an actor. Like 3 weeks later, he called me in for an interview.
And when you I mean started in a sense, number one, did you have a plan to get into daytime, or was it just something that just landed in your lap?
I think it was not daytime per se. It was any acting work that I could find, and it was the show was a half hour. It was totally different than it is today. We shot live on tape the first 2 seasons I was there, and that's an experience, especially for a newbie. And I took my sister and Rick Springfield in on the interview. They stayed in the hall, but as moral support. And I thought I blew it, and I got a phone call from the wardrobe lady on a Sunday saying I worked on, I think it was a Tuesday, and I had no clue. So I changed my plans, went to work, and I think they aired something on Twitter and Instagram where they actually showed the episode that was my first, and it was with Erica Hope, who was playing Nikki Reed at the time. Okay. And I did the first year with her, and then Melody came in the following year in 1979.
In your luxurious career on the show, for you, what would you say for yourself was the most, I mean, I know what my favorite is, but what would you say for you was the most memorable storyline that you were involved in?
I have a few. One, of course, was Ricky, the one that got me the Emmy. But there was Cindy Lake dying. There was saving my father from the mob. And my first adult storyline was the Cassandra storyline, which was he totally transformed Paul from being a younger leading man into a leading man.
And for you, like, did you ever in that time frame ever, just thought to yourself that you may want to, because I know back then a lot of actors who were in daytime tried to make the jump to prime time, but then weren't very successful and ended up either fading out of their career or jumping back into daytime. What made you stay in daytime for so long?
The environment, probably. The first 4 years, I was a little antsy because I thought you could spend your whole life here, which is pretty much what I ended up doing. Mm-hmm. But I think I got to a point where I was married. We started a family, and I thought, the bells were fabulous, and here you can have an entire career and not have to travel or go on location for months at a time, or and that's exactly, I was there most of the time. I mean, we did, as you know, public appearances during the heyday, mm-hmm. but we didn't work always 5 days a week, so I spent a lot of time going to soccer games and with my kids that I wouldn't have been able to do unless, you did a sitcom or something like that. But as the F1 drivers will tell you, they're away from their families from March until December. They get 2-week breaks every now and then, but it's a really hard life to be away that long.
Mm-hmm. I mean, for you, like, I mean, I've talked to, obviously, working in the industry as a primetime actor, and I mean, I have so much respect. I always tell, you guys, whether it's Josh or Sharon or you, the pace that you guys go at, the amount of dialogue and script that you guys have to memorize on a regular basis. How did you feel for yourself, like the adjustment? Was it for you hard to pick up on that speed so quickly, or something you just get used to?
Well, both. I think that there are people that are more predisposed to learning quickly. Peter Bergman is one of them.
Mm-hmm.
Terry Lester was another one. And for me, it was always a little battle to get. It was almost easier to have 50 pages than 20 because you couldn't think about it. You just looked at it, went into it. In the old days, we had cue cards, which were helpful because if you forgot that adjective or the P word or whatever, you could glance down and grab it and save a take. But it is a skill, and Joshua is a guy that learns very quickly too.
Well, dude, honestly, I have to say, for you have always been a big inspiration, just to me personally, not as a friend, but in a sense, number one, as an actor and as a performer, because, watching you all these years and continuing to bring so much life to a character. I can't even pinpoint, one decisive moment that whether it was a small scene or whether it was a long extended, year out storyline, the level of depth that you would bring this character to life has been so legendary. What do you think has made Paul's character connect so much with people all around the world?
I guess I wear my emotions on my sleeve, I guess, and that's it's valuable in the acting world, but it makes real life more difficult because you're so sensitive to feelings and emotions and experiences, and and especially in times like these, it's hard to see the bright side, but I think those are the qualities that Bill found in his lifetime characters, that he knew that he could count on, those characters opening up their soul and letting you see. And that's pretty much, I think people react to honesty and truth, and that would be, I think, would be the reason to answer your question, is that I tried to tell the truth the whole time.
So I'm sure you've already had this question asked to you before. What would you say the difference is between Paul Williams and Doug Davidson?
Paul is probably more of an adult at this point, and there's a childlike quality that is still truly in that lives in me. I could spend years in Disneyland and a fantasy world and things like that. And I think Paul is like a grown-up. He's the chief of police, and he really doesn't dabble in much of the fantasy. So I'd have to say that would be the greatest difference, would be that there's a little boy still very much alive in me.
Hey, keeping a kid inside you is always the best thing, especially in these times, because when life gets so serious, you sometimes have to find that release somewhere else, that you can just let that inner child come out every once in a while.
Well, yeah, and I think it is important. It is weird that that we are in a worldwide situation where it's really hard to see the bright side. I mean, on so many levels, with the COVID and the Black Lives Matter and the political situation, and all those things are not easy to see through to the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah, I mean, it has definitely been, I mean, things that are happening right now in the world. It just seems like it's a never-ending cycle. Like you wake up every morning and it's always something new that you have to like face and take on and try to navigate through. And it's almost to the point where like, I feel for us in the business, even for example, like how this has changed our industry so much, people look for us for relief. And right now they can't even really get that relief because productions are just all over the map right now.
I think The Young and the Restless is one of the only shows that is up right now.
So, is what?
I think Y&R is one of the only shows that is actually making new episodes right now. I think Days was down, and maybe GH is up, and Bold and Beautiful, but a lot of the nighttime shows are down. And my daughter's a violinist in London, and she would play on the West End, and completely gone. None of the musicals, none of the theater is going. I mean, it's stopped.
Hold on a second. We have a question here for you. Hold on.
Okay.
Have you ever still been in Paul Williams? Have you ever still been in Paul Williams mode and went home like that? Have you ever still been in Paul Williams mode and went home like that?
I'm very self-critical, so I usually would have a moment where I wish I could have redone something. And there were several storylines where it was difficult to go in and out. So in those times, I would stay at the studio and just completely immerse myself in what I was doing. It was easier than switching back and forth. Most of the days are easy to do, but some of the more emotional moments were they overlap.
I have to ask the question because it's my favorite storyline of yours, and I actually wish they would have played it on the recast when the show was down. The Cassandra Rawlings storyline, the dry ice episode. How did you guys pull that off? Because that's still, to me, like I literally play that scene over and over again.
I don't know how Bill did it, actually. I don't know how he came up with it. I can't tell you how complicated it was. They ran test after test after test, how quickly it melts. It was quite a science experiment to actually make that whole thing.
Have you ever, like, for yourself, have you ever, gotten the script and literally, because I know I've experienced this, where you look at a script and you are so mind boggled of like what you're reading, where you're like, this just doesn't make no fucking sense, but you still gotta go ahead and do it anyway. How do you find that challenge?
That is really, really hard for me personally, because I talked about telling the truth. And if it's something that you don't understand or can't get behind, it makes finding your truth that much harder. I have, there are some classic, I don't remember that. I wish you would have told me that you were going to ask that, because I take pictures of the lines in the scripts that I have the most difficult time with. Okay. And I've saved some classic one. The one that comes to mind right now was about, it was with Sharon and Home for Misbegotten Women and adoptive, but it was all crunched into one sentence. And I took a screenshot of it, and I just recently saw it. I'll send it to you.
Please. Because I always tell Sharon all the time when we speak, and I'm like, because I mean, sometimes she gets some scripts where I'm like, you really got to do that, but the thing with her is that like she can take chicken salad and turn it into gold, and I'm just like, how can you, with a straight face? And she's like, they can throw nursery rhymes at me, they can throw Mother Goose rhymes at me, and I'm just gonna come in there and play it like it's I gotta give my best to it every single time.
I have honestly asked her how she does it, but you're absolutely right. She is that is definitely one of her gifts. She can, and she doesn't take it home. She separates herself. She never takes. There's no stress or pressure with her. She's always in a good mood and cheery, and we could all stand to have a little of that Sharon Case quality.
Oh, trust me. If the world was duplicated with a million Sharons, we'd all be in a great mood all day long.
And she's really fun to boot on top of it all.
Oh yeah, no, between her and Josh, who I've traveled with many times to do appearances, and I remember the first time she came on an appearance with us, and Josh had bet me. He's like, I'm gonna bet you $100. He's like, Sharon's such a grandmother. She'll be in bed by 9 o'clock, and your night's gonna be over. I have the video to prove. It was 6 in the morning, and Sharon was still dancing, partying, yelling, screaming, hollering, having fun. And I woke Josh up the next day and said, I thought you said you were going to be in bed by 9. She was up till 6 o'clock in the morning partying. And I'm like, have anyone I've ever traveled with, she's probably my most fun person to do
absolutely with. Yeah. He's pretty funny too.
Josh is very, very funny too. Yeah, very, very funny.
A very quick wit.
So for you, in the sense, number one, like what was your everyone has their journey and their story of how they got into this crazy business. What led you into this business? Was it your first passion, your first love?
I've told this story before, but growing up, and I grew up in the infancy of television, where we had half-hour shows like Combat and Whirlybird and Rescue 8, and I was fascinated by playing those roles. And I had a hat box, like an Army helmet and a knight in shining armor helmet and a fire helmet. And I could dress up for all these things. I actually put Rescue 8 numbers on the sides of my mom's car, which was a Buick, and we drove around town like that. So I was kind of hooked into that fantasy aspect, and really the only place you can do that in real life is in the movie business.
Did you ever feel, I mean, in these long 30+ years in daytime, of making that jump into film?
It was a totally different industry. It's more spread out now because we have the advent of cable and streaming, and so there's less definition between a daytime actor, a nighttime actor, and a film actor. But they were 3 separate entities when I first started, and it was incredibly hard to make the jump from one to another. And now, you've got big movie stars doing television. You've got television stars that are doing movies. I mean, it would be hard to find one that, Ryan Reynolds started in television. I mean, I just think about, and then I would see him on with 2 guys, a girl, and a pizza place, or whatever it was. And it was pretty obvious then that the gifts that would make him so popular were very evident at that time, even though the show didn't go anywhere. But I think it's easier now to cross over than it used to be.
Well, that's the thing. For me, every time I watch you, I've said this to many people. I've always viewed you as like, our late friend Christophe St. John, who was known as the Denzel of daytime. I've always pictured you as the Paul Newman of daytime. Like you've always brought this to me more of a dramatic feel as an actor than a daytime actor. And to me, it's like watching Paul grow over the years, watching you grow over the years. I feel even now, even in the sense of where times have changed, you've only gotten more polished, more fine-tuned, more in touch, not just with the character itself, but bringing an element that, to me, has been lost in daytime for so long where, as you said, with the bells, it was drama. It was what built the show. It was that heavy storyline where you could take a story and it was almost like what I realize now, the differences, between daytime then and daytime now, where there it was a marathon. It wasn't a sprint. Like the way that the Bells wrote, it was almost like where he'd write a storyline and it would start here. And then a year later, it would all sort of come together, but it wasn't like this rush race where we had to like now where it's like you're putting out scripts, they're putting out storylines, and then all of a sudden the storyline just goes left. And then they're like, 2 weeks later, it's gone. And it's almost to the point where they feel the audience is just stupid, where they're like, okay, well, where were you going with that storyline? And then there's no ending to it. And that's where I feel like for you, I've always was surprised that you stayed doing daytime as long as you did. Because I'm like, this is a guy that needs to be in an HBO or a major, prime time element, because the way that you bring to me storytelling, not just to Paul's character, but just to the way that your approach to acting, what do you feel for you is the reason why you didn't make that jump? And do you still want to make that jump?
Well, I guess I was supporting a family and I think you get the same answer from Eric Braeden as well. He signed on to the show. He never even considered doing daytime television, but he wasn't working. He had a chance to do television. They said, "Don't do television. You're going to make a movie break." But his son Christian was an infant, and so then he decided to do television. And I think he had the same answer with when he accepted the role of Victor. I think he tried it out for 6 months, and it really, you get to do what you do every day, and if you're not happy with it, you get another shot at it tomorrow. And so I think when David Hasselhoff left, I don't think he had any of the entanglements of family that were tying him down. He had an offer for the Knight Rider, which dovetailed into the Baywatch thing. Mm-hmm. But those transitions are difficult sometimes, especially when they tie you down to a contract and it has to time out right. Justin Hartley did it, but that was the reason he accepted the role in the first place. Mm-hmm. And he put all his cards in that series, but it went from 0 to 60 in breakneck speed. So he's not looking back. But so many, people step off that cliff and into oblivion. And I don't know. I just the opportunity that I was waiting for never revealed itself. And I gotta say, for most of my career there, and all of it with Bill, I mean, sometimes it was frustrating, but most of the time it was really great, really fantastic. And I thank you. I want to thank you for your compliment. That's very touching and heartfelt. And I've got to thank your listeners or viewers too, because they've been posting some really kind things on the little.
Let me ask you a question here. Let's see what question.
Someone said today that people watching daytime have no attention span, which is the reason why the daytime viewership has gone down.
Say the beginning of that one.
Someone said that the attention span now, due to the demographics, has the reason why daytime has gone down due to social media.
I think, I think it would be more about what you said, that making the left turn. And so if you go down that road and then suddenly something doesn't make sense, you get disenfranchised with the show that you're watching. And what did I was watching a lot of hits that are on cable or streaming, like Mr. Robot was not fast. The Crown is not fast. What other thing? The Queen's Gambit is not fast.
Mm-hmm.
These are really successful shows, and I think it comes down to really good storytelling. And if it's a page turner, it doesn't have to go fast. All you have to do is have a Friday cliffhanger and Monday resolve. And if you're moving your story along and it makes sense, then I think it's the medium still has viability. I will say that there have been huge head scratching things where the powers that be make choices that
made no
sense. In my mind, are absolutely totally absurd.
No, because that's the thing. Like you hit the nail on the head. Where like I remember, the '90s of daytime, especially YNR, where not only was it must see, there was always like that Friday cliffhanger where you're like, fuck, I gotta wait till Monday. And now it just seems like there's no cliffhanger. Like it's just you wait for something that you think is, and this is what I realized, and I don't know, maybe you can attest to this. It seems like when certain actors who come on the show, not the veterans, but over the last several years, where the new actors come on the show and the audience is still warming up to him. They're not really sure which way to go with this actor. And then all of a sudden, like, he's getting terrible script after terrible script after terrible script, and you read the comments, but then all of a sudden, like, for 6 weeks, he starts getting better scripts, and then he's fired. And I realized it's like, as soon as an actor is about to get a good script, I'm like, he's always on the way out the fucking door. Like, it's gonna be ending your run, buddy. So, like, I remember, like, being on the road with Jeff Branson, and I remember asking him when he was on the show, I said, when they took you off of contract to reoccurring, I said, how did you feel about that? And he said, me being on that show as contract, to me, he said, unless I'm a veteran player there, it's a nightmare. Because he's like, you sort of get pigeonholed into the storyline. And then when the storyline goes flat, they got nothing to do with you. So you're just sort of sitting there in the back in the shadows, and you're getting maybe like 1 or 2 days of shooting. But where if you leave and take a hiatus for a while, and then you have a reason to come back, it's like they're giving you material for the audience to get invested into. So for me, it's like you've had your hiatus since going off of contract, and then you come back, but it's just like, to me, the consistency in the writing and the storylines just don't seem to match up, because it's almost like, okay, you expect, you as a player on the show who has so much history on the show, where when Paul's coming into a story, that, your storylines used to stretch out for months, and you get invested. I think the audience would get invested as a viewer. So, now, do you feel that, like, daytime soaps, especially even YR, would be better than being on a regular syndicated everyday network and move more into, say, for example, like a Netflix, into a streaming?
I think it comes down to like everything else. It starts from the writing, and I think one of the biggest challenges for daytime soaps is that there's an hour of television, or whatever it is now, 38 minutes of television a day. I know Bill would never tell anybody what his he knew what he was doing in his head, and that's where it stayed. But he didn't have a Bible. But I don't know how you could do a show like this without having it plotted out to some degree, because I think there are things that and COVID has made it. Granted, it's made it more complicated, but there are things that I became very frustrated with, because either people weren't paying attention, or they didn't remember how it was done, or how you could do it efficiently, or they sometimes spend a lot more money saving money than they would just making the right choices. And I'm not just talking about our show, but there are a lot of shows that are run by corporate entities that it's really, middle management gets into trouble when they're afraid to say yes or no, or put their reputation on the line. And Bill, he didn't care. He did what he felt was true, and if they didn't like it, then they can go somewhere else. And he ran like that for years. I don't think he could name the CBS executive if they were standing in front of him. He just was his own. He was the skipper. He would come in. I think he would, and this is in the old days, but he'd listen to these radio talk shows that were on at 3 a.m, and they'd have call-in features. I don't know if they still do that, but he would listen to that, and I'd sometimes run into him when he would come in the morning, and he would be like really early, and he'd have a fistful of notes of things that he had thought of during his time away from the office that he wrote down. And it was a 24/7 gig for him. And I don't think that many people are capable of doing that. And on a daytime show, that really is what it takes. And if you have a team, and if you have a good team, then it's easier, but it's still such a constant. And then you've got the corporate entity saying you're spending too much, or you're doing this, or you're doing that, or we can't do that anymore. And so they, and COVID has played a role. They led up to a wedding, and the groom got COVID, and they put somebody else in the place. So
Yeah,
to me, that destroys the whole wedding.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I would have had to have changed the wedding to he doesn't show or he's kidnapped or, I mean,
something to keep the audience.
yeah, oh, so that's who that's playing that today. And I mean, we did it for a time, but not on something that critical of like a
I
wedding
agree.
show. Yeah.
I definitely agree. I mean, that's the thing, and I think that's the problem. It's like, which to me, just even as I said, as a viewer, but just on a business standpoint, like being a producer, being a writer as myself, where I'm like, okay, I'm looking at the bigger picture. And when you have such a loyal fan base, like the Y&R fans, which to me, they're some of the craziest fans I've ever seen in my life, who are so passionate about the show. And to me, like when you look at all of the other shows per se, number one on CBS, there's nothing that's been around as long as Y&R, as far as I can remember, with that consistency and that level of passionate fans, where to me, why they wouldn't be more invested into keeping those fans rather than pushing them away. Because to me, it's like, this is a show that I look at, and I've said for years, it could cross over into primetime if it wanted to and be a primetime show. Because when you look at all the other daytime shows, from the cameras to the visual aspect of the look of the show compared to other daytime shows, it feels like you're watching a primetime show. Like it has that element to it.
I sent Laura Lee a picture that was taken on the set, and it was in our apartment, and I couldn't believe how beautiful they made the picture. The skin tones, the lighting, I mean, it looked like a real apartment with a skyline, and it was incredible. And I think that what happened to Sears? I mean, they sold Craftsman. Why would you sell your best tool maker?
Mm-hmm.
They sold Kenmore. I mean, somebody's making the wrong decisions. I mean, and granted, a lot of it is financial and caused by financial things. But boy, I don't know that I'd let my two biggest brands walk out of the store into somebody else's.
No, I agree. I 100% agree. I mean, I think that's the problem now I find with just, networks itself, the way the business has changed. I mean, like where you could, especially in the pandemic, it's like you have shows where it's almost where like even the newer shows, you get invested into a show and then all of a sudden it's gone. And to me, a lot of times even shows that are even like, where they spend millions and millions and millions of dollars promoting a show, and then it airs. And if it doesn't hit that like audience market by like the second or third episode, they're gone. And to me, it's like, isn't the art of storytelling to take people on a ride, on a journey, not a fast race of just consistent, like, let's just throw something in your face and hope it works. To me, it's like if you're gonna have a show that you're, especially like, for example, like, Y&R, which to me, as I said, has that element of a primetime feel. You should never, as you say, like, throw away your best tools, because this is a show that literally could be your bread and butter for another 40 years.
Well, if you take a step back just a little further and you look at very successful filmmakers like George Lucas, for example, or Steven Spielberg, or who's that? The quirky filmmaker. I'm blanking on his name. The a long time ago in Hollywood. His name is
Oh, Quentin Tarantino.
Quentin Tarantino. All these guys were fans first. So they knew what they were doing because they were so familiar with the genre and the shows that they loved and grew up on. And so when they became who they are, it was a continuation of their passion. And I think most of daytime is being run by corporate executives that they studied communications, and they weren't. I don't think they could sit down and make a television show without the creatives. So a lot of choices that are made are not ones that benefit storytelling, but are the bottom line, or they're bean counting, or they don't get the difference.
Would you ever see yourself directing?
Yeah, I think I would enjoy that. I enjoy working with actors, and I would, like I said, when I was a kid, I was a fan too. So a lot of the things that I see happen now just don't make sense to me. And it is tough to do it daily, but we did.
True.
We did it.
And you wouldn't have been lasted this long if you weren't doing something right.
Yeah.
It's not a mood subject, but we lost a brother, Christoph, who I miss dearly, 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 dearly. And the last time I had seen you was at his memorial. How has that been, that hole now in the halls without him?
I miss him every day.
Sure.
It is incredibly painful for me to talk about because he had some very difficult personal things happen in his life, and it made it very hard to overcome. But he was an exceptional human being, and he was just an incredible friend.
To me, I can't tell you, Doug, how many times that man pulled me out of the gutter. How many times he saved my life when I was going through some of the worst moments that I've ever had to encounter. And I always used to say to Christoph, I'm like, when it came to, I guess you would say, answering the phone, Christoph was the worst in the sense of keeping in touch sometimes with people when he would go off on his tangents. But he somehow, I always told him, I said, you're like Batman. Because it was like, whenever I was going through something, if I hadn't spoken to him in a week, or like 2 weeks had gone by and we hadn't spoken on the phone, he always knew when to call. He always knew when to be there at that moment. And for me, it's been such a struggle, because as I said, I miss him every single day. I think about him all the time. And, I really wish, even for me, and I knew that, number one, the demons that he faced, and you know that as well, you just felt so paralyzed. You felt so helpless because there was so much you wanted to do. But it's like, you can't fix a pain like that. You can't fix something so tragic of when he, lost his son. And to me, I've always just sort of said, like, somehow, somewhere, his light is still shining. Because it's the only thing that keeps me going every day. And I feel like, when I watch you, and I watch Josh, and I watch Sharon, I still carry that peace in my heart, watching it through you guys, where he's still present.
There are sites on Instagram that I can't look at all the time because it's overwhelming. But they there's one that puts up scenes and his human videos and things with his dog, and it's just a reminder of really what a bright star, and I mean that in the human being sense, that he was. He was quite a guy. And there was a quote that I read in his memorial show. I think it's posted on my Instagram somewhere, but it talks about how a creative soul like he was is incredibly sensitive, and a pinprick is a gash to someone like Christoph. So the things that he had to face were, even
monumental.
looking at it critically, were insurmountable. I mean, the loss of a child is something that I can't imagine anyone going through. Whoops. The sun is setting.
I can see that. I can see that beautiful sun there. So I'm going to play a game of word association before we let you go here. When you think of, just think of the first thing that comes to your head.
Uh-oh.
Eric Brady.
Trusted friend.
Laura Lee Bell.
Trusted friend.
Tracy Bregman.
Great trusted friend too. These are all people that at one time or another, just like Christoph did for you, picked me up. And hopefully
Christian
I've done the
LeBlanc.
same for them. What?
Christian LeBlanc.
Clown.
Oh my God. True that. Melody Thomas Scott.
An enigma. She is incredibly sensitive. She is super, super smart. And she has a knack of saying the right thing that is incredibly helpful, disarming, kind of like Jeannie Cooper did. That they'll make a suggestion in an oddball way so you can actually hear it.
Trisha Cass.
Sweetheart. She's another one that's had a pretty tough year.
I honestly, even this, the dynamic thing is, I was always shocked is how Paul and Nina never fully came together as a couple. I always just felt that there was something there that was more of a chemistry than cricket.
There was a writer change, or we had such consistency for like 27 years with Bill, and then if you count the executive producers and head writers, I bet you we're in the double digits in less time period, which is a tough thing to do.
Your biggest inspiration as an actor?
That changes, but I think the one that's held on would have been probably Cary Grant and Paul Newman, those two.
I just said, to me, I'm all the fans watching. I'm crowning him now. The official Paul Newman of daytime will be Doug Davidson's name for the rest of his career. So make sure you hashtag that. So for yourself, in the sense, number one, like what are you, to me, for yourself, like do you have any goals and things that you still feel that you want to obtain, not only as an actor but just in the arts itself?
I think the what I'm going through right now is really a rebirth, and a lot of those things are very painful. Somebody said they're going to their sons at the Juilliard School. Fabulous. And I don't know. My kids are grown. The show for me isn't what it used to be. So I don't know. I'm trying to sort those things out. I honestly can't give you a solid answer and pinpoint. I think that there should be a law where everyone has to learn how to play golf. Because when you get to a certain point in your life, you need something that will take up most of the day.
And COVID definitely has made us all try to, you know,
Holy
navigate
cow.
and do anything to stay busy during these times, man.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's like when you're so used to a routine like we go through in the business, and all of a sudden now you got all this time on your hands, and you're like, what the fuck am I supposed to do? Like,
Yeah.
like just even staying. I mean, to me, there's only so many things you can do in a day to stay busy. And I think that's where I'm like, you know what? You know, when I look at the amount of dialogue and script that you guys have, I'm like, yo, this will be the time I actually wish I was on daytime. Because there's so much reading to do just to keep me busy.
Well, and especially if it takes you a while to learn them, like it did me, it then fills up the day. So when I have a freer schedule, it's when I had like 42 years of something that intense and constant, it is very strange to look at the schedule and say, I've got nothing on the calendar.
It makes, I'm sure the fans can attest to it. It makes legitimately to me no sense, like none. Just because you're the guy to me, number one. That, like as I said, like you know,
I really appreciate that. Thanks. And
you,
and
Eric, but mainly you, man. Like you to me have been such a core element for just overall, like not just. I mean, like the happiest day for me, and I remember it when I gave you a hug after you won your Emmy. To me, it was so well overdue, and to me, you should have had multiple times, and that's why for me, I mean, that was probably my last appearance coming to the Emmys, because I was so frustrated, especially even with like Sharon, who puts out so much incredible work, and my good friend Catherine Kelly Lang. Every year, I'm watching them get snubbed. And it's legitimately like I'm watching them give it to actors either that are not on a show anymore or a show's been canceled, and I'm just like, what do they have to do?
What about Melody?
There's another one I could say. I mean, it's to me in the sense number one where I look at it where I was so happy to see that achievement for you, but dude, you don't need a trophy to anybody to prove you're not one of the very best, not just in daytime, but just in this industry for the last 40 years, period. I will put your work literally up there with the De Niro's, with the Pacinos, with the you know, the Marlon Brandos of the world, because to me, to be able to have that long lasting legacy, and to me, you know, as my friend Sherman Augustus, who was our guest last week, he said hello, and he said, you know what, I give my hat off to Doug. In fact, he goes, if I had one, I give my hat off to him, because he's like, you know what, to be able to hold a consistent legacy of a character for that long and keep people invested year after year after year after year after year, that's no easy task. I mean, you look at even some of the legends that are in the industry that don't have a career that long.
I truly appreciate it, especially since you know, what has transpired in the last 3 years as far as Paul is concerned. And you know, it wasn't really a goodbye. It was sort of like a tapering off. It was a very and continues to be to some degree a difficult transition for me from doing it every day to not having the choice, or it is I can't tell you what that means to my heart to hear you say those things, although I think it's a little over the top. But
no, it's not over the top.
I tell you,
it's well deserved. It's well deserved. And to me, it's, you know, I'm not a person that sugarcoats shit. It's a personal slap in the face, in the sense to not just the fans, but to me personally, just because you have been such an inspiration in my career, in my life. You know, legitimately, before I got into this business, I worked as a private investigator. I became a PI because of your character.
You told me that.
And yes, and for me, it was, you know, to be able to be able, in the sense, number one, to watch your journey and see the history and see the legacy. It's inspiring, and to know that, number one, that like the way that, I mean, even when I look at the evolution of Paul, went from having an office, an assistant, Lynn, and a team, to all of a sudden being like where he's running a police station out of a coffee shop. And I'm just like, where are you even, like, where is the legacy? Where is the history? Where is the thing that brought you guys this show to the number one platform? And to me, what makes no legitimate sense is that where before you had all of these shows, Guiding Lights, you know, One Life to Live, Days of Our Lives, all these different, you know, competitions, and now you're down to like 3 shows, you know, basically or even 4 shows, General Hospital, Bold and the Beautiful, Y&R, and Days of Our Lives. And when you put all of those shows together, it's no disrespect to them, but they just don't have the same legacy, the same history, the same feeling that fans get when they come home every day and they've pretty much grown up, you know, of generation after generation.
Oh yeah.
And
Completely.
to watch, you know, to me, what was done to you, it made my blood crawl, just because I'm going, is this how you, and I sometimes feel this way, you know, the business, we got into it because we love it. But when I look at the way the business is now, where it's almost like one of those vice grinders, that it just takes the best talent and throws them into a grinder pit and spits them up and chews them out. But then when their show numbers start to fall, instead of doing the right thing and saying, okay, you know what, maybe we made a mistake here.
Well, they don't make mistakes in Hollywood.
clearly, you know, and it just, as I say, to me, I don't need to speak for the fans. You just deserve better, brother. You just deserve better.
I appreciate. I got to tell you that they have been incredibly supportive and kind and loving, and I've got a great family, and just out of a point of interest, my daughter just messaged on your podcast from London. So
where is she? Hold on.
She was Calissa Davidson. It's been a few minutes, but she was she was watching in they're watching in Romania too. So
Romania, wow, okay.
A lot of
there's a question here: is Y&R having a 40th celebration anniversary?
For me, that would have been 3. It would have been 3 years ago. I think the show will be 47 or 48 this year.
Let's see.
So, and I don't
Guys,
know,
if you have a question here, drop it below. I'm trying to find some questions here.
I have to warn you that I've been given a 10% battery.
Okay, I won't keep you here. Hold on.
But
we'll take a couple questions before we go.
Okay.
Guys, if you have a question here, drop it below for Doug, and we will quickly try to answer a couple questions here.
You've got some really sweet people that watch your podcast. I know. I can tell you what I've been. I resist mentioning this because what I did find during the pandemic is I did shorts for Rick Springfield and then that series, but I also was doing cameos to support the American Cancer Society. And so there are things that I've been filling my time with that have made up for all the time I've been spending at home, not only due to COVID, but the lack of schedule.
We
And
definitely,
I gotta say,
when this is over, we got to do an appearance together, man.
yeah,
We got to hit the
okay.
road somewhere.
We can do a farewell tour.
Hey, I don't want to hear farewell. To me, it's rebirth. That's what I'm looking at, rebirth. Let's see what questions we have here. What was it like working with Jeannie Cooper? That is,
Oh, you know, we mentioned Christoph. I miss her every day too. She was such a rock, and sensitive, and she had to wait. You know, she's a very stylized actress, but and not unlike Melody. But sometimes it takes an audience, or not the voting. The voting people that do the Emmys to realize they've created this entire image of Catherine Chancellor and Nikki Reed Newman, and you know, it's bigger than life, and she was bigger than life. She was incredible.
Do you miss not working with Stephen Ford as detectives?
He was a kick in the pants and a lot of fun. And yes, I do. I think it was before the pandemic. So it's been a couple of years since I've seen him, but it was at his wedding up in Northern California. And he's as funny and fun as he ever was. So yeah, I do that.
I have a question for you. If you could swap characters with anyone on the show, who would you want to play?
I always said Kay Chancellor because she had such range in what she did. You know, she had remember the doppelganger that she played,
Yes.
Marge. Was it Marge or
Marge, yeah.
And I mean, and it was amusing, and but it was a kick in the pants to watch. So because of that range, you know, there's something about Paul that has to be within the reality range, and that's kind of how I approach things. But for her, you know, she could do anything. She could be Mary Poppins.
Oh, I see one question.
Would you ever do a comedy series?
I'd love to. I would have to be, you know, the closest I got to it was fooling around on the nighttime version of The Price is Right. And we tried to enter humorous elements, but a very big aspect of my personality is surrounding humor.
Let's see what.
Last three questions, guy. We'll take three more.
Let's see here.
Is that real liquor you're drinking?
Well, I'm not drinking anything.
I am.
Oh.
Did you have to audition for the show when you came on?
Yes. It was originally it was for a new character. I think they didn't plan on it lasting 42 years. It just it worked out that way.
Okay. Last question, guys. Hold on. Make it a good one, guys.
A two-parter. Thanks, you guys, for all your support, and I'm reading all your comments, and you too. You were a needed boost today, especially having lost Penny this week.
Listen, man, I mean, for me, I know what that loss is. I mean, I don't know if you knew, I had COVID last March. It was after, it was shortly before Greg got it. We were all traveling together. It was myself, Greg, Catherine. I ended up 2 months in the hospital with her. I have, unfortunately, underlying conditions myself, so it made my situation a lot more volatile, a lot more worse. But, you know, as I said to people, number one, I mean, the virus, yes, is real, but what I call the scamdemic of 2020 of extending this entire lockdown and putting us all out of work. And I mean, at some point it has to end. I just want people to be safe. But I think that, you know, at some point, you know, we have to start living our lives again, you know, not just being confined to our houses and trying to figure out the next situation to deal with. I think that, you know, people need entertainment. They need to be able, number one, to find something in these times for all of us, you know, to be able to, you know, bring us together. And I think, you know, if there's anything that I've learned myself from not only this pandemic, but even like when Christoph passed, is that we're not promised tomorrow. And we have to take advantage of every moment and every opportunity that we have in life. And I think that, you know, and I've always said this, sometimes the worst things that happen to us in life can sometimes put us on a path to the best things that happen in life. And I think in your situation, you know, as much as it is a letdown and it's frustrating and it is to me downright disrespectful, I think for you, my man, that this is something in this moment, right now, this situation, the way that things have changed, is only going to put you on a path for something even greater that I feel that is left for you to leave your impact, your mark, your legacy that, you know, what you've done in daytime, it can't be duplicated. But I think that right now for you, you know, your wings are about to soar in a completely different direction. But I think it's going to be the point where, you know, you say to yourself, you know, as we talked about in daytime, it's not a race. It was a marathon. And you circled the laps and you did your 400 relay and you handed off your baton. But I think in the end, you'll be the one in that winner's circle as you've always done, because I think, as you said, it's about speaking your truth, telling your truth, finding your truth. And I think for you, in the sense, number one now, is that where the truth for yourself is, okay, 2020, when all this shit started, I've said to people over and over again, what is the definition of 2020? Clear vision. I wear glasses, you wear glasses. The definition of 2020 is clear vision for us to see what's in front of us, see what's behind us, see who's with us, who's supporting us. Am I on the path that I was meant to be on? Am I doing everything that I am supposed to be doing? And most importantly, self-reflection. You know, self-reflection, I think that for you, I think, you know, with this situation, we've all had to adjust and, you know, change for a lot of us, especially in our industry. It's scary because, you know, we're not doing 9 to 5. I mean, yes, if you're on a contract and you're going to a, you know, consistent work, as you said, every single day, but art business, as you know, before you get to that 30, 40 plus year career, it's about the hustle. It's about the grind. It's about the constant where, for us, for example, like as entertainers, and this is where I, even for example, like many talks that I have with Christoph, and, you know, not that I foreshadowed the ending, but when I saw how much pain he was going through, and I, you know, he understood me because we both have felt a lot of the same pain. We both have gone through the same low points in life. And for me, you know, when you look at our industry, the majority of people that are in our industry, the biggest battle we have as actors, as entertainers, is within ourselves. Because it's like, when you're working, you know, everything, when the bright lights and all the glitz and glam, it's all gravy. But once you go home, you shut that switch off and you're in your confinement of your house. There's no praise, there's no fanfare. It's just you with your thoughts. And it's, for us, it's like, we have to be.
You got a
creative.
cross on. I would assume that it's more than just you.
Yeah, definitely. And this cross is for me is my symbol, where, you know, when people ask me, for example, all the years of like, where did the Teflon come from? And I'm like, when you look at my life story, and I say that, you know what, that like, for all the things that have been thrown at me, you know, a lesser man would have been dead. And I think for everybody, in a sense, they have to find that inner Teflon in themselves when we're going through changes, you know, because again, you know, our business, as you know, it's very unpredictable. You know, 1 minute you're on a, where you think everything is, I mean, you're thinking everything is, this is a job I'm gonna do forever, and this is my life, and I'm gonna retire doing this. I'm gonna fade off into black doing this, and then all of a sudden,
Boom.
boom, and you're now trying to figure out, okay, like, you know, when you start hearing the things that I'm sure we all have heard, you know, growing up in this business, why don't you get a real job? Why don't you get a real job? Like, and we're like, this is all we do. Like, this is the only thing we know how to do. And for us, it's like, if we're not staying creative, we're dead. Like, you're mentally dead, you're emotionally dead. And you gotta find that balance, and, you know, and where you like, okay, you can fall back on family, you know, but dude, you're a creator. You are a person, number one, that was not only, to me, meant to be as an actor, but I think, you know, you have that ability, just like Sharon, I always say to her, you know, an ability to touch lives, change lives, and allow people, number one, to step out of their own lives. Just as we as entertainers, it's like, we didn't become actors just because of the fact that, okay, we like performing. It was more of an escape from our own lives, not having to deal with the reality, not having to deal with, like, you know, the pains. And that's whenever I used to see, you know, Christoph, where it was like, you know, he always had that smile. You know, Christoph's smile, and that laugh, that infectious laugh that he had,
Yeah.
where you would never know when you went to work or at a party that there was anything going on with Christoph,
No.
because he always had that ability to deflect and make sure that everybody else was feeling good and feeling amazing. And I know that you are so respected by your peers for that same quality, that same life, that same energy. And I think, as I said, that, you know, this is just another page in your chapter, man. Like, the book's not over yet. This is not over. This to me is just a new chapter for you to start writing. And I think when it's all said and done, a lot of people are going to be eating a lot of crow for the very bad decisions that they've made. And that's my 2 cents on that.
I really appreciate your words, and your the people who watch are incredibly sweet too. So thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you
I'm
so
down
much.
to under 5%, so I think I better say goodbye before. But God bless you, and God bless you all.
brother.
And stay
And I
safe.
hope to see you soon. Love you, man.
Love you too.
Peace, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. Make sure you tune in, subscribe. You can follow Doug Davidson on Instagram at Davidson YR. You can follow me, your host, DTEFLON, at DTEFLON. If you guys want to watch this full podcast back, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Join us next Sunday for another hot guest on another edition of Hot Topics Radio TV. Thank you, my man, Doug Davidson.
All right, thank you.
Love you. Peace,
Love
guys.
you too.